What's going on YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to be giving you an advanced smoke guide. Now, I will say I made a beginner smoke guide, so I'd say like if you're gold or below, maybe you only have like 500 or less hours on this game, and you're wanting to learn how to play smoke on a very basic and fundamental level, go watch that video first, because this video is specifically for advanced players. I'd say like Emerald and above. People who have been playing the game for a while, they know how to play smoke, they know the basics, and want to learn a bit more. So with that out of the way, that's pretty much it for the intro. I'll stop wasting your time and I'll get straight into it. By the way, I have a lot of allergies, so my voice kind of sounds nasally. I apologize. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. So first of all, with smoke, I covered a lot of basic stuff in my last video, like I said. So we talked about loadouts, we talked about smoke grenade basics, like how much damage it does, where you throw them, where you use them, etc. So all of that I'm just not going to go over in this video, and I'm going to skip straight to advanced stuff. So the first thing that I want to talk about with smoke specifically is having a setup in mind. So we talked about in my last video, again, setting up sight with his shotgun SMG-11 combo, but there's levels to it, right? Like you can just make the rotates for your team, right? You put a rotate here, and then you put like holes over here, right? And then you'd put head holes for rafters, and you wouldn't really like think twice about it. That would just be your setup, right? So if you're gonna play smoke, you have to fully utilize the fact that you're the one making the site setup, and you need to play around it like it's your jungle gym, right? Think about playing Oryx. When you play Oryx, you're making holes and you're opening hatches across the entire map, and you're making rotates across the map with your body so that you can play around them and use them to your advantage. You have to think of smoke the exact same way, but just on site. You have to create like your own site setup, for example, every single site, so that you have more control of the map. So a great example, right? This is a basic site setup. If you put a hole here and here like I did, and you stand on top of this table as smoke, you gain a vantage point onto this window, onto the rafters window, onto the breach, and you can use these holes to deny plants, right? So already, just by creating 2 holes, I've essentially made it a lot harder for them to walk in and plant the bomb based off of stuff that I'm going to be playing, right? So, more stuff, right? You can put holes here. And then what you can do, you can stand on top of the table, or you can stand really far back into the room, and you can throw the smoke grenade over the wooden plank right here. Aim lower than that so it doesn't hit the roof, but obviously you can throw it over the plank, and then you can hit behind the CC rack, and then you'll be able to smoke the enemy players that are there. So stuff like that, using the site setup to be able to make your own sort of jungle gym that you can play around off of, and stratting based off of your setup is extremely important. Not just making the default site setup, but changing it up a bit and actually using your site setup that you made is a very advanced thing. So, like I said, you can even change it up a bit, right? If you're setting up site in a certain way and it doesn't work, or you're gonna do it again because it's overtime, don't set it up the same. Change it up a bit, right? Make it your own jungle gym. Make it very hard for attackers to push into you just because of your site setup. So if you put a shield, like let's say, your teammate has to rotate here. This is like console siege, and you have a shield right here. Put it over here this time. Or if you had a shield on red stairs, put it over here this time. Or if this is where your shield was before, then put your shield on red stairs. Or, it even goes for like site setup, right? You have a rotate here, and you have no head holes here. Well, this time put head holes here. And this time actually play behind this reinforcement and use the head holes here, or put a shield behind the head holes, right? So you can watch con if they do a con heavy push. You can put holes downstairs right here, and you can just put holes behind the breach, and you can play below with a castle, right? So like using smoke and his shotgun to be able to create this environment that's very, very scary for attackers to push in is my first tip for playing smoke in an advanced mindset, right? Second tip with smoke. Smoke is meant to lock down a site and use his utility and his guns and his deployable shield to lock down an area. That's very basic smoke shit. So if you're going to do this, you need to learn where to hold. Every single site that you go to on every single map has a very basic deployable shield spot that you can hold a smoke. I'll give you an example, right? You come to church, you put a shield right here, and you play behind it as smoke. Now, one thing that I will say is if you're playing smoke consistently, but you have other people that are playing like Alibi, Thorn, very common fragging ops, typically they will also bring a deployable shield. If they know where the default spots are too with their deployable shields, which 9 times out of 10 they probably will, they're going to put the shield down before you, right? Because if their speeds in, they'll get to there faster. If not, then it's fine because you're setting up site anyways, right? So if they get there, you need to know where secondary spots are for deployable shields. And as smoke, it's very powerful because like I said with smoke in my beginner guide, and if you're an advanced player, you know this, it's not a plant-friendly meta right now, right? You are using your smoke grenades within the first minute and a half of the round, delaying an initial rush, and then falling back to site behind your deployable shield to gain the most value out of smoke. You're not using your smoke grenades within the last 30 seconds because people just aren't planting anymore. It's just not happening, right? So that being said, usually for every single site, there's a deployable shield that's in or near site, and then there's a deployable shield that's off-site or like near the objective that you use initially, and then you fall back to the other shield to play later, right? Good example is this shield in dirt right here. This is an extremely common smoke spot in the very high elo and in every single competitive team that ever plays Clubhouse fucking ever. You know why? Because people can push here extremely easily. There's EMP grenades, and there's hard-breaking charges, and there's Maverick on this map. If you have one of the three, you are guaranteed to open up dirt. So people started thinking, okay, let's just not reinforce dirt, and instead, we'll have somebody that plays inside of dirt to be able to ward off the push. Well, who would be the best at delaying and warding off a push? Smoke. And he also has a deployable shield that can really slow down this push even more to make it to where we don't even need to reinforce dirt, and we can save the 2 reinforcements for something in sight. Right? So learning stuff like that, where it's like, okay, where can I delay the most amount of time that is not at all what the attackers would expect, right? So we talked about this dirt shield, not very common in ranked, very common in comp, but not very common in ranked. We talked about upstairs, people put a shield on red stairs, right? But you can put a shield in radio, or you can have a shield facing con through the heddles on the red stairs. You can do very, very weird shields. But the point is, if you're going to do a weird shield that's near or off site, you need to be playing behind it and using your smoke grenades aggressively to then fall back to the shield in sight, or just fall back to the site in general later in the round. That way you're wasting the most amount of time possible. I'm not saying at all roam with smoke, but I'm saying find places where you're near sight, not necessarily in sight, to put your shield down to waste the most amount of time possible, right? This is another really common shield in basic ranks. The only problem with this is people will go on the blue hatch, so once they do that, you can kind of just get off your shield and then play your smoke grenades like here, right? So there's a lot of different stuff, but just like I said, use your smoke grenades early, play offsite with your shields, and play more aggressively with your shields in like really weird positions where they're not going to expect it. That way you're being unpredictable and they have a much harder time getting around, right? Tip number 1 was unpredictability with your sight setup. Tip number 2 is unpredictability with your shields. Now in my last video in my basic smoke tips, I did give you one advanced tip, and that was using your smoke grenades as a zoning tool to be able to hold more areas than one. And I talked about it very briefly, but I'm going to go very in depth in this video when I talk about it. So let's take blue for example. Usually you have a rotate right here, and you'll have a reinforcement in the middle, and maybe if your teammates are good, they'll have head holes and or feet holes on this wall right here, right? If you don't know, that's what you should do. The reason you have that is because people will push blue early in the round, and then they'll try to go moto and drop the moto hatch and plant church. So if you want to be able to deny that, you have a rotate, a shield, an ADS, and a smoke player to hold blue and to hold oil pit. And then once they rotate to moto, you have head holes and a reinforcement here that you can play off of to be able to deny that plant, right? So that's why you put head holes here, and that's why you put a rotate there. That being said, how does that have to do anything with playing smoke and using zoning efficiently? So, like I said, in the lower to mid elo, they push blue first, they push moto second. But in the higher elo, they actually do the opposite. They'll completely roam clear, because a lot of people do SSG roams. They'll completely roam clear, they'll open the hatch, then they'll send one guy to blue very late round, and at the same time, they'll drop moto, right? Because if they push at the exact same time, the person behind blue can only take one gunfight, and eventually, one of them's gonna kill him, right? So, as smoke, a great way that you can negate this and actually hold 2 people at once is by smoking off one person and having a gunfight with the second person. Now, in this example, honestly, I would recommend smoking blue and having a gunfight with a guy in church, just because you have head holes here and reinforcement that you can swing off of. But with blue, you only have a generator, it's much more dangerous, and you have a hatch right here, and there's just more angles that they can shoot you from, right? So I would personally smoke that off and shoot this, but you get the idea, right? If I'm smoking somewhere, that makes them have to back up or delay their push. And if I have my gun somewhere else, I also have my gun somewhere else, and I'm in a gunfight with somebody, meaning that I'm effectively as smoke covering 2 areas and 2 gunfights at one time. That is zoning. That is zoning with smoke. You can do it with Chanka, you can do it with Goyo, you can do it with grenades in general, you can do it with Legion utility, LA utility, etc. Because once people hit a Legion mine or an Ela mine, they're not going to rush you, right? They're going to back up, pull the Legion mine out, and then come back, right? So you can use that time to have a gunfight with somebody else, and then zone back to where you were going. So that's a pretty advanced smoke tip. Like I said, I talked about it in my basics guide, but we can go over some more examples. So I'm going to bring you upstairs again. People push construction very late round if you're playing CC, but they'll open up this breach very early. But they won't walk in this breach very early because there's a rafters player that has head holes in a window here that can deny their run in, right? So what a lot of people do, and what you should be doing if you're attacking Clubhouse, is they'll open the wall, then they'll open this wall, and then once those 2 things are complete, they'll have a guy on this door, on this wall, and on this wall, all at once, all 3, pinch the kid in rafters. Because if you're sitting in rafters, You have to worry about this wall, you have to worry about this door, and you have to worry about this wall. What a lot of people do, and what I do in ranked, is they'll have a Capitao come through here with the hard breaching charges. They'll flame bolt right here, which makes the fire fall onto rafters, and then the rafters player has to run away. But if the door's open here and the wall's open here, if they're running to 90, they're gonna get shot. If they're running to the stairs, they're gonna get shot, right? So either way, you have multiple people coming into rafters. That being said, once the rafters player is clear, then people come in through the wall, and it takes a while for the rafters player to get cleared out, especially if they're playing a zombie or a Mai. They have a lot of utility to protect themselves. So people walk in this breach very, very, very late, and people also walk into con very, very, very late because they have an entire other side of the map that they have to clear. They have walls to get open, and they probably have somebody that's inside of con that they have to clear out. That being said, usually what happens, they push here late and they push here late. Now with smoke, like I said, you can have a gunfight with one, and then you can have a smoke grenade on the other. What I would do, because people who are planting come through here, is I would smoke here, and then I would have my gunfight here. Also, with this site, you have a lot of cover here, 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 to be able to have very safe gunfights, and because your gun does not do a lot of damage, it just has a high fire rate, right? SMG 11. You want to have gunfights that are a lot more out in the open that you can shoot people from, and you don't want to be holding really, really tight angles. The reason you don't want to hold tight angles with low DPS guns is because if they run by this pixel and you have like a second to react, you're only going to get 1 to 2 bullets into them, right? And it's going to do minimal damage. But if you have somebody like Jaeger's AR, or you have like an AK and you're holding a pixel, and you get 1 to 2 bullets in them, that's almost their entire health. If they're a 3-speed, that's a down, right? So if you're holding pixels, you want a high DPS gun. The SMG 11, unfortunately, just is not that. So I would have my gunfight here, and I'd smoke here. And then also, if you have a hole right here, you can smoke anybody who hops in the window, or you can have a gunfight with anybody that hops in the window. Doesn't really matter. But like I said, just another example of how you can zone 2 areas off at once properly. So in this video, we have talked about using site setups as your own jungle gym to throw off the attackers and to utilize your smoke grenades the best way. We've also talked about how to use deployable shields and how to roam with smoke to waste the most amount of time possible, the best way possible. And then we've also talked about zoning, which is you just effectively covering 2 or more areas at once with 1 player, which is extremely powerful, especially in ranked and everybody's running at you. So with that out of the way, that is pretty much it for this video. Smoke is a very simple operator. He just has a very high skill ceiling, so there's not much I could really talk about other than just getting into like the real nitty-gritty of like specific things, like I was talking about those deployable shield examples. Now I could go even more in depth on certain maps. If I do map guides, I'll do them as smoke so that you can know every single smoke setup and how to play around it. But like I said, that's pretty much it for the entire video. If you like this style of video and you want to know more advanced guides, because I know I have some good players out there that watch my videos, let me know down in the comments below. If you are new and you didn't understand a lot of the concepts in this video, that's okay. At the very end of this outro, I'm going to link the beginner guide to smoke that you can go watch after that. Like the video if you like it, sub to the channel down below. My name is Alka, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.